leading ride-hailing player, but also the leading ride-hailing player when it comes to EV or e-mobility movement.
And on the flip side, if we had to identify that single biggest risk that could still slow or even just derail EV adoption in Kenya, what you drive over there to Nakuru, if your battery dies, what happens, right?
Yes.
So those are some of the risks. Some of the things we need to address, even as we talk about just scaling e-mobility in Africa.
Then daily payment for drivers for a period of 2 years, they're paying as minimum of from 200 to 350, depending on the OMs that we have.
Hello and welcome to the GreenShift podcast. As I always say, this podcast is where we explore the innovations, ideas, and of course, people driving Africa's transition to a more sustainable future. I'm your host, Nixon Kanali, and today we are diving into a very, very interesting conversation into one of the most what I always call, Dimmy, the most important shift that we've seen happening in the continent right now, that is electric mobility, right? And more specifically, what it actually looks like on the ground here in Kenya. And now, of course, if you live in Nairobi, like some of us who have been born and raised here, you probably noticed it already. You've seen a lot of electric bikes. We've seen conversations around EV policy happening and a growing sense that transport is about to fundamentally change, right? But the real question that we keep asking ourselves, even as we write about this, as we talk about this, as we blog about this, is it just a wave of hype? Are we finally just at a tipping point, right? And of course, to help us unpack this, I'm joined by, of course, someone who's right at the center of it. Dimmy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so of course, Bolt is a company that many of us know for ride-hailing, but which is now quietly just positioning itself, as a major player in Kenya's e-mobility transition. So, Dimmy, welcome to the GreenShift.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah, let me just start by you. Let's start by just you introducing yourself and your role at Bolt.
Okay, perfect. Thanks very much, Nick. Very happy and glad to be here. So, Dimmy Kanyankole, Senior General Manager for Bolt East Africa, Hand Rides. As you know, Bolt has been in the East Africa space for some years.
Mm-hmm.
And actually this year we are marking our 10 years anniversary in Kenya.
Oh, 10?
Yes.
I mean, 10 years?
Yes.
Crazy. It looks like very, very recent.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah.
So also, as Nick just mentioned, we are the leading ride-hailing player, but also the leading ride-hailing player when it comes to EV or e-mobility movement. We have a couple of categories on our platform. We have 4-wheelers, 3-wheelers, and 2-wheelers. And for 2-wheelers specifically, a couple of years ago, we made a bold decision to say we are now going to revolutionize the EV in Kenya. So by doing that, we really injected some serious cash and some serious investment on that. So majority of the EV you see in Nairobi on the road are being financed by Bolt.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Let's start from, of course, one of the biggest conversations we see happening this year of Kenya now rolling out, its national e-mobility policy,
yes,
which we, aggressively covered here, even at on our platforms. So this actually was a very big signal of intent, especially when you consider that Kenya's broader push towards clean energy and also just reducing transport emissions, right? But policy is one thing, as much as we're talking about this rollout of this policy. So policy one thing, then execution is another. And we've seen gaps between the two before, actually. If you're a Kenyan, you've seen those happening. So there's a lot of gap between policy and also execution. But no, from where you sit at Bolt, does this policy actually match the scale and urgency of what's needed to actually just transition Kenya's transport sector? Yeah. Or is it more of just a fundamental, foundational step that still leaves major gaps around infrastructure, incentives, and private sector alignment?
Okay, thanks so much, Nick. So the way I look at this policy, number one, I would say I'd like to even appreciate that because not so many countries or markets in Africa have even reached the level of laying out the foundational policy for the EV. Mm-hmm. So Kenya on that one is quite ahead.
Yeah.
And most of the things they covered in the policy, I wouldn't say they are already at the fruition, but at least there is some clear path.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if I look at the most important things that also aligns with Bolt, for example, the policy says by 2025, actually the aim was now to ensure this by all the EV border inputs or imports at least for all the registrations, 5% of them should be electric.
Yeah.
And the goal is to still say by 2027, all two-wheelers on the road, at least it should be 30% of them should be EV. So if you look at that, to achieve that number from current numbers, the EV space need to be growing by around 1.6% annually. And if you look at that, Bolt particularly have been growing by 150% when it comes to it. So so I think what they want to achieve, especially on the EV space for the two-wheelers, we are not very far off. The foundation is there already. The biggest player, like Bolt and the others, are already playing on the same space. So I think it's just now saying, okay, let's see now really connect all the dots that are responsible now to really grow the industry to ensure it will continue growing. So if I look at the things that are very, very, very important for this, the players are there, Bolt is there, financing are there. Bolt is financing, for example, for us with a partnership with Mkopa, we do co-financing. The OEMs who are really producing these vehicles are there. Actually, we have around 4 or 5, even locally, based companies that are manufacturing the parts here. So now what's pending now is to say, okay, the government now can come in together to say, one, I want to really to standardize the batteries. Number two, to really now push for interoperability. What does that mean? It means Dimmy buys a bike today. I don't need to worry where to swap my battery. As long as I see a swapping station, whether they are owned by my company or not, I can just go there and swap. Then number 3 is now to really continue on the tariff push. Because we understand most of the technology that comes to this EV is imported, right? So the tariff now will play a big role to ensure that at least the investors, but the border and riders who are getting there is some tariff that really protects them and gets these assets at the affordable rate.
All right, and even just, and if we zoom in a bit, zoom out a bit, we've seen across Africa, multiple waves of EV optimism, over the years. We've seen pilot projects. We've seen, of course, startup launching a lot of interesting projects. Like, of course, like the battery swapping startups. They're growing massively across Africa. We've seen, of course, government-backed initiatives like now this policy. And of course, some of them have gained traction, but again, many have struggled to scale, right? So what feels structurally different from this moment? And, is it the technology maturity? Is it the failing battery cost? Because I think the battery is actually the most expensive product when it comes to the EVs, or even policy alignment or something else entirely. And on the flip side, if we had to identify that single biggest risk that could still slow or even just derail EV adoption in Kenya, what would that be?
Okay, so maybe I'll start with the first part.
Okay, those are so many questions in one, right?
Which makes me feel like this policy, this particular time, really aligns I think we have a very big chance of really achieving what the policy says. So number one, I think, is the foundation. So the foundation today is there. So the foundation for EV, if you think about it, number one is the OEMs, availability of OEMs producing those assets, right? So the assets are already there. Number 2 is now the infrastructure required. So we're talking about charging and swapping infrastructure, right? So if you think about charging, I think 4 years ago, when people started importing these EVs, it would take around 2 to 3 hours even to charge a bike, right? So that one wouldn't even make sense for a commercial rider who just want to change or charge within 5 minutes, because they want the same experience they get when they go to the fuel station, for example. So we're talking now bringing that down to around 3 minutes per swap, right? So it's there, right? Then now you're talking about a lot of charging stations. So I don't need to worry that if I drive 10 kilometers, my battery is down. I cannot get another station the next 2 kilometers or so. So at least the loop is being closed now. Then now if you think about financing, I think it was very, very, very tricky at the start. Say, even financing, can they really finance the EV? Because they were more of the traditional, but now we have made some progress, right? Then if I think about even the tariff, they made some progress as well. So, for example, most of the parts that are being manufactured here are excluded from VAT. Right? So I think the foundation is there. And also the things they're pushing the policy, they're not saying we are going to move from 0 to 100% in a year. at least we are not at zero anymore, right? And we're not aiming at 100% within 2 years.
Yeah.
So it makes some sense. Okay. The other part, which I think can really slow this policy, or can really cause some challenge. So if we don't unlock the three things I mentioned earlier, if we don't unlock the battery standardization, yes, we'll continue growing, but we want to grow at that particular pace. If we don't standardize and ensure that there is interoperability of charging and swapping, then that will be a challenge in the extension of the infrastructure. So we're talking about very close to 400 charging stations in Kenya today. A year ago, it was less than 50% percent of that, right? But also, if you think about these 400 plus, they are concentrated, maybe 90%, close to 90% is in Nairobi. So what does that mean? It means we are growing, but now it's concentrated in one area. So if this infrastructure continue growing in all these major cities, then this dream we want to achieve it will be achieved, right? Then now on the financing part. So financing part, so M-Kopa is right there, and I think there are some other financing partners doing that. But also now the players such as Bolt come and say, this thing, if we really leave it to the traditional financiers like banks, it won't grow. But since we want now to grow the industry, let's put in some money, we can grow it. So I think these things are really necessary to ensure that we continue growing this year. Okay.
But, just as you said, at least there's some progress being made. You don't start from 0 to 100, just, one off. There's some progress being made. I think, I think also the biggest gap has to be infrastructure, which you mentioned. A lot of charging stations are concentrated in Nairobi. You'll even get an EV, for example. You drive over there to Nakuru. If your battery dies, what happens, right? So those are some of the risks. Some of the things we need to address, even as we talk about just scaling e-mobility in Africa. Let me just bring it back to Bolt. So for years, a lot of us, of course, have interacted with Bolt purely on ride-hailing platform, right? So you open the app, request a ride, get from point A to point B. But globally, and even just back here in Kenya, we've seen Bolt expanding into a much more broader mobility, ecosystem. So even as we just head to the second quarter of 2026, how should we understand Bolt? Is it still a ride-hailing company at its core, or is it evolving into something closer to an integrated mobility and just energy platform?
Yeah, thanks very much, Nick. So
that's a very tough question.
But to answer your question, number one, Bolt is a ride-hailing platform, right? So we are still a rides app. So primarily we are a ride-hailing platform. So our ride is the business, right? So as a rider, we'll continue using, when I say rider, I mean, for us, we mean passengers, So normal passengers or public users will continue using Bolt to request a ride. They will be able to select any category, whether electric or non-electric, and whatever. That continues. That's our basic and the big business, right? But also we understand for really to continue growing or to meet even the growth ambitions we have, we need to have a very stable supply. And the supply for us is drivers of all kinds, including the border drivers. So for you to really grow the supply, you also need to understand what are the challenges. So a few years ago, we realized ownership was a very big bottleneck for most of the drivers. So that's why we really invested in. So what we are doing now in the EV, as I speak today, we have over 3,500 bikes that have been co-financed by Bolt. And if you go into the four-wheelers, that's electric. If you go into the four-wheelers, we're talking about more than 5,000 vehicles in Nairobi that have been co-financed by Bolt. So, and co-financing, maybe people maybe think we are just making some jokes here. For every electric bike that we co-finance, we are putting down 50,000 Kenya shillings. Wow. So what does that mean? It means we're co-financing a bike at around 13 to 33% of the total asset value. So what does that do to the driver? Number one, it lowers the down payment. So if you go so Dimmy comes to Nick and say, Nick, by the way, I just want to drive. Can you lend me a car, or can you give me a car or a bike? I'll pay you. So in the industry, currently for the bike, the down payment is around 20K minimum. Then the daily payment is around 1,000 for a year, so that you finish paying off, right? So when now Bolt injects the money, that game changes forever. So number one, down payment has been lowered to 10K. Then daily payment for our drivers for a period of 2 years, they are paying as minimum of from 200 to 350, depending on the OMs that we have.
Yeah, that's quite affordable.
So
actually.
yeah, so now what it means, this border driver who is now EV co-financed by Bolt, what it means is now they have additional 500 shillings per day every day that they save. Put it in a year, you're talking about 180K. You know, 180K is the same amount of money you can use to buy a new bike.
Exactly.
So an EV border driver today on Bolt, the amount they save by not using the normal petrol products, within a year, it allowed them to buy a new bike. Yeah. So our role there is to continue driving demand, and maybe to show you why Bolt is at the intersect of this EV is no OM will invest in Kenya if they know what they produce won't be bought, right? And no border drivers today or financier will finance a bike if they don't know whether somebody will pay. And how each of these really know a driver will pay is because they know if they bring that bike to Bolt, Bolt pushes the demand, drivers will have more money means more repayment and stable payments. Yeah.
Interesting.
So we are at the center of this.
Okay. I like that you talk about driving demand, because I think also that's one thing we need to see happening in the market. The bikes are there, but again, how do we grow that demand?
Yes.
Right. And let's just now get into what Bolt is actually doing on the ground. I know you mentioned this, but there are a lot of conversations around EV in Kenya right now. But of course, many people still, many people just, for many people, it's still very, very abstract. So walk us through now through Bolt's electric mobility strategy in practical terms. What is already operational today? What is still in the pilot phases? And what milestones are you working towards over, for example, let's say 12 to 24 months?
Okay, perfect. So thanks. So okay, we have some few projects under EV that are still in pilot, but today our EV in Kenya is not a pilot anymore. As a program. Since 2024, as I said, we've been able to finance around 3,500 EV bikes, right? So what does that mean? We piloted with the 100. It made sense. It made economic sense to the drivers as well. The rate of repayment was very close to 100. The financiers, our partners like Mpopa, said we are willing to continue doing this. Then we also unlocked additional funding for us. So on our end, the program is really working, and we're seeing the driver economics being improving, right? Then now what we are really trying to do now and to the next phase is, number one, can we really expand this? Can we now connect more OMs? Because today, with our partnership with Mkopa, we have around 4 OMs. Talking about Spyro, talking about Ampersand, we're talking about Ringo, we're talking about Rome. But we think there are so many OMs that are going to be coming in the industry. How can we standardize that and ensure at least these OMs keeps bringing the quality products for Kenyans, that then we put them under this partnership? Now drivers can access at a very, very, very small rate, low rate, right? Then number two, we normally work with these OMs to really push on the infrastructure development. A normal OM may not know who is coming in Kenya today, may not know where to put the swapping station. So with our big range of data, we are telling them, guys, look, this is where majority of our drivers spend most of their time. Based on these heat maps, we think if you put this swapping station here, you can really now expand the service and even grow your business. So those are kind of the data, even beyond the demand that we're putting to the industry.
All right. Now, just speaking of charging station, one of the biggest bottlenecks globally when it comes to EV adoption is now the charging infrastructure, which we talked briefly just earlier on. And in markets like Kenya, that challenge is even more pronounced or just more visible. And we've seen Bolt lean, into battery swapping as an really good alternative, right? Work with the partners you mentioned. Now, just help us understand how that works in real world from a driver's perspective. Starting their day, managing range, swapping batteries. What does that entire experience look like, and how does it compare to just the traditional fuel model that they're used to?
So in terms of comparison with the traditional, I start with there. So we have more charging stations and swapping stations today than yesterday, than last year. But we are not, in terms of distribution, you cannot compare with the normal petrol stations.
Yes.
So now to empower the drivers, all these OMs that we work with, they have an application where a driver, number one, can track their battery percentage. So every time the percentage is going down, now they can get in the application, check the percentage, and check where is the nearest swapping station, and how far it is. So that that time they can know if I have 10% left on my battery, should I wait for another order or first to go charge? And normally, most of the centers allow drivers now to even swap within 2 kilometers radius, right? So that's a very big win. And when they get there, it's still mixed between semi and automated. So there are some stations that are fully automated. The driver gets there, they scans on the battery cabinet, they see their bill, they make a payment. The moment they make a payment, now they swap their low charge battery, put on the cabinet, take the new one, they stop it in, then they start the ride. So we're talking about an experience of between 3 to 5 minutes at the swapping center. It's almost the same as the fueling at the petrol station, though the distribution network isn't that robust as the petrol station. So now what I see as next step is now when interoperability comes in, that means I don't need to drive 2 kilometers to find my OM's swapping station. I can go to the next one I see, right?
Okay. And of course, we have seen a lot of other growing players entering the EV space in Kenya. Of course, we've seen a lot of startups do the same. I mentioned earlier. We've seen even actually telcos and even government-backed supported programs around this. So the competitive landscape is clearly not just clearly heating up, especially as we head to 2026. From your perspective, what is Bolt's unfair advantage here? Is it scale? Are we looking at capital, technology, or your existing driver networks, or even just something else obvious that competitors might even struggle to just replicate?
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned, we are 10 years old this year. A lot of work has gone into the place. Number one, to refine our product to be very localized and customized for the Kenya market. And number two, we have built a very big network of drivers or supply, right? Then we have built a very big network of users or demand, right? So as I mentioned, we are the leading ride-hailing player in the market. So if a new player comes,
the biggest market share.
Yes, we have the biggest market share. Actually, the biggest market share than all competitors combined, so to say. So if you're a newcomer today and you want to really invest in this, we really welcome all this competition because you see the cake is so big, right? But for them they will need some time to really capture that. Number one, build up your supply. You need a very, very robust technology as well. Also, you need to be ready to invest. We've been here for 10 years, but I can't tell you that we've been profitable for 10 years. So it requires some muscles as well.
Yes, and 10 years is enough experience actually for you to understand the market.
So that's a very competitive edge that we have. But also I think it's about the spirit of innovation. We keep evolving every year. We keep looking at the opportunities and we keep trying to solve those issues in the means we can or bring together some stakeholders. For example, as I said, when we really wanted to grow into this space, we realized drivers are willing, but they don't have enough capital. If we lower this to a down payment of 10K, most drivers can afford. So that we have to bring in money, right? Then I went to Mkopa and say, by the way, we are willing to invest this money. Can you now finance the rest and now handle the collection and you handle this fleet? They said, why not? We can pilot. Then if it works, then we can continue. Then they came on board. We started with 2 OMs. Then later on, from the feedback from drivers and whoever, some OMs kept coming and we were like, okay, guys, if you think you have a very robust product, we'll work with them Mkopa now to test the robustness and even our drivers to test. If the feedback is great and perfect, why not? So that's how we've been growing that. So it takes some time, takes some, you need to have a long-term commitment as well for it, because you don't want to pilot and you say, okay, I can't do it.
Interesting. And the good thing, the pilots have always come out successful. So that's the most important thing to pick from that. And of course, just another interesting layer to this data is, you operate at city scale, right? Which means you have real-time insights into how, Nairobi moves, talk about peak demands, trip patterns, idle times, high traffic corridors. The last time we did a podcast with Hazel, he shared very interesting insights around the same as well, which was very, very insightful. Now, how are you just using this data to make smarter decisions around EV deployment? things like where to place battery swap stations, how to optimize driver earnings, or even just predict demand. And even, are there conversations where this data is being, for example, shared or integrated into just the broader urban planning, or even just government infrastructure decisions?
Yeah, so thanks, Nick. So yes, we collect and we use data in everything that we do. For every order that we dispatch, is a data that we store and we analyze, right? So maybe to give an example, 1 year ago, our EV coverage in Nairobi was only 20%. So what do I mean? We had created a polygon where if you're outside of that polygon, you couldn't order an EV because we knew the supply base we had by then couldn't serve the entire city. But now with the growth of EV, now we have covered the entire Nairobi. So we know where the orders are coming from. We know, okay, if we are to save these orders, what happens now if a driver now go to pick this rider and in between the batteries, 0%, what happens? Are there some nearby swapping stations? If not now, and there are so much demand, can we work with these now OEMs and whoever? Say, guys, look, we want to expand in this area. We want at least X number of swapping stations in this area. Then we can now do whatever. So that's what we do. Then number two is now, once we have all this data, is now we work with the different players. So our stakeholders are not only commercial stakeholders as the OEMs, financing partners, but we also work with the counties. I work with the regulators. I work with the even key stakeholders like EMAC. So in this kind of policy exchanges and planning, we are able now to share with them the grand scale plan we have about scaling this product. Where we think the trend is going in the next 1 or 2 years, where they really need to really invest heavily and stuff. So one of them, I'll tell you, even Kenya Power recently started offering the charging and swapping.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So if you think about it, think about a traditional power company now saying, by the way, what I'm seeing in this city, I think now I need now to even move from normal selling electricity to even now offering the charging, right? So those are the key developments. But you see, they can't do that without the data and looking at how the trend is going, right?
And if they need this, they have to come to you.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. And at the end of the day, as much as we talk about adoption of EVs, it also comes down to economics, right? And we've seen even covered Bolt being very vocal about EVs reducing operational costs. And some of which actually you've mentioned on the podcast, which is actually a very powerful incentive, especially for drivers operating in on thin margins, right? But let's try and quantify that. What does a typical driver actually save per day or per week by switching to electric? And how does now Bolt's financing or leasing model just reduce the barrier to that initial upfront cost?
Okay. Thanks so much, Nick. So if you think about savings, so the normal IC bikes, for example, have number one, there is fuel cost. So today the fuel cost with, of course, the new price increase. These normal IC bikes, they use petrol. They're spending around at least 1,000 per day, right? And the actual 1,000 is only 5 liters, right? So 5 liters will make you a range of around 150 kilometers or so for a bike. For a same EV, for a range of 150 kilometers, they're using between 400 to 550. So 400 to 550, that's the power usage they are spending on whatever. So at a grand scale, that's a saving of around 500. So the EV driver is saving 500 per day. Now there is the maintenance cost. You see, these EVs don't even have the engines in they don't change the oil, they don't have a carburetor. So these guys are saving anywhere between, so from the fuel perspective, they are saving anywhere between 12 to 15,000 a month. Then from the maintenance, they are saving around 2,500 to 3,000. So total saving in a month, we are talking about 15,000 to 18,000. So in a year, it comes down to around 180,000. So today, if we go start a business today as bikers, right? You buy an EV and I buy the IC. In a year, you will have saved 180. 180 is a good amount of money to buy
a new bike. Exactly.
So talk about total cost of ownership in 5 years. You're talking about this driver saving around 830,000 shillings in 5 years. So that's the impact. Now, coming to Bolt, a normal bike today at a purchase price, IC or the petrol is much cheaper. It's around 120 to 150,000, right? For EV is quite expensive. We're talking about 150 to 250, or depending on the model, right? So that's why at the upfront cost, most people can't really get into the EV right now. And you mentioned rightly at the start, the biggest cost on the EV is on the battery, which is up around 40 or even more than 40%, right? So now that's when Bolt comes in. They know you want to switch to EV, but you can't afford. So now Bolt tables down 50,000. That allows you now to even get access to this bike with the only 10K and start driving. So today we have some instances where a very good driver comes in the office at 8. And as long as they have all the documents required, they have their 10K, in the evening, he can already start making money.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very nice way to look at it. But again, let's just bring it down to the street level. You spoke about the border rider, right? So picture, that border rider in Nairobi, they've never heard about electric bikes or even seen a few on the road. So they're just curious, but also very, very skeptical about just taking that direction. Of course, we've seen a lot of them have concerns about reliability, battery life, earning potentials, which I think that has changed because they're seeing how much they're saving now. Those are very real problems and real concerns they're raising, right? So if you are speaking dedicated to that rider, not as the Bolt GM, but of course in practical terms, what's that case for switching to electric today for them?
Yeah, so for me, I think the first catch will be on the savings, because most of these drivers don't care much about which brand even you're selling. They care much about how much will I make and how much will I spend to make that amount, right? So if we think about a normal biker, we are saying similarly, they may make the same amount of money in terms of gross. But now what will it hit into? Will it eat into IC bike is the operational expense. So now we'll approach from the operational expense where I'm like, okay, guys, look, you want to drive, but for the EV, you're going to be saving 500 per day. So that's a massive saving. From maintenance, you're going to be saving around 5,000 to 3,000 per month. So that's a lot of saving. Then number 2 is now the aspect of ownership. Because now it's okay, yes, I understand the saving, but now I don't even have money to even acquire this asset. Then now that's when Bolt comes in. Have you ever been a driver? Yes. Have you ever driven anywhere? And do you have a proof? Yes. So we require these particular documents. Do you have them? Yes, I do. Then we require at least 10,000 as a down payment. If you have, then we take you to our financing partner. You get a very good training. Actual training and the assessment. So if you you miss out the assessment, then you may not even get. So after training and assessment, then you can go home with your bike and start making money with the only 10K. So it's the only way to really empower this particular community.
Okay, interesting. Even as now talk about living demand, as you said earlier. Now let's just look at the bigger picture. Even as we just almost come to an end of this podcast, Kenya is very increasingly just being positioned as a leader in e-mobility in Africa, right? Partly, of course, because of its our renewable energy mix. Partly because of actually innovation in the transport sector. So where does Bolt now fit into that bigger picture? And if the model you're building here works, do you see it being replicated across other East African markets or even beyond, in markets where Bolt is very, especially in terms of the EV adoption?
Okay, thanks very much, Nick. So I think the topic is EV, but I think I've spent 90% talking about the two-wheelers. But the fact is we also have four-wheelers that are EV. So if you go on Bolt application today, even if you want to take a car, you can select whether you want the normal car or you want an electric. Also, if you select our favorite comfort category, high chance you will meet some electric. So there we also have the EV. So what do I mean by this particular information is the EV space in Kenya is not only consolidated under the two-wheelers. Also, we see the development in the EV, in the four-wheelers. But recently, we have seen the EV in public transport as well. So I think the general industry is really growing. So now we have public transport such as buses. We have four-wheelers, we have two-wheelers, we have three-wheelers coming there. Now, the next move, I think, is now Nick saying, okay, the next car I'm buying, I'm not going to buy the fuel, right? So I think the move is there already.
Yeah.
In terms of infrastructure-wise, we have seen so many partners coming to say, I don't necessarily need to be the OEM, but now I can invest in infrastructure.
Yes.
So when I talk about that, we have seen even traditional fuel company now offering charging and swapping. Good example is even Total.
Yes, I've seen that.
Yeah. So you see now players are really coming up. You see the government powered, such as the KPLC, now powering the charging, right?
Yes, yeah.
And from the policy, e-mobility policy, they're talking about generating over 40% power than what the country needs. So the power is not a problem. The distribution is. So now we just need to add another layer to really grow. So in terms of Bolt, since 2024, we invested heavily in the EV space and actually in the financing in Kenya. We have seen it's working. We have onboarded thousands of drivers who, in first place, wouldn't have made money because they didn't even have the starting capital, right? So now the move is now to expand. So in Kenya, our expansion plans continue going to other cities.
Yeah.
Then outside Kenya, in Q3 and Q4, we are now expanding into Tanzania and Kenya. Tanzania and Uganda, on the EV, at least for two-wheelers.
Yeah.
So the partnership we have today allows us to expand in East Africa. So we are now just doing the final checks. But across the Africa continent, EV for us as internally and financing is not a new topic. We have active financing projects in Tanzania. We have them in Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania now, even in Uganda soon.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. And Dimmy, there's always the gap between perception and reality.
Yeah.
And when you engage with policymakers or even just drivers, what is that one misconception about electric mobility or even just Bolt's role in it that you find yourself constantly having to correct?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I think there are a couple. Yeah. So number one, I think the early perception was EV is untouchable in terms of price. So it is, in case you are talking about the cash value. So today, for example, if you think about, I'll talk about our industry, right? If you think about the two-wheelers EV, is very close to 70% higher or higher priced than the normal IC at cash level. If you talk about four-wheelers, it's also 2x, right? So in terms of the asset value, EV is quite expensive. But that does not mean it's not accessible. So that's when financing comes. So now with our financing with our partners, we are seeing that somebody can actually acquire EV at a cheaper rate than even going for a normal IC bike, which is not financed. So now that's the progress we've made. So it's not, yes, it's expensive if you're using cash, hard cash purchase, but now with financing, if you come through us, it's even cheaper at purchasing because you only need 10K to start driving. And also long run, you are going to be saving 8K per year, right? Then another conception, I think it was about reliability. So at the start, the consumption, there was some reality around it. Because with the very few distribution network, so many drivers were worried. What happens now if I need to recharge or swap and I don't have means? So now we have covered. So different development partners have come in through, and that now has been advanced. Then I think safety concern. There are some safety concerns, but also most of this is just perception, right? When you're on the road, safety is the most important thing you need to look at. And there is no vehicle type which you say is much safer than the others. You just need to be safe. Anything that happens on the two-wheeler EV can happen on the two-wheeler IC. So it's just
Right. Thank you very much, Dimmy. Even just as we wind up, for someone listening to this right now, maybe, they're on the fence about becoming a Bolt EV driver or even just a Bolt driver in general, or even just trying an electric ride for the first time. What is the one thing you want them to walk away knowing?
Drivers or passengers or both?
Drivers, actually.
Drivers.
Yes.
Yeah, so for drivers, I want to assure them that we are in this mission with the long-term commitment. We are not just co-financing to say once we hit this number, we stop our financing. No. So we still want drivers who want now to switch to EV. They can always come to us. The doors are always open, and they can start driving and saving every day, right? For passengers, we are continuing to be an innovative company. Yes. They should expect to see more categories, more options available for them. And as everyone says in Nairobi, with the Bolt, you can get a transport anywhere and anytime. Yeah. That will continue being our mantra.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dimmy, for joining us on this episode of the GreenShift podcast. As I always say, this podcast is where we get to explore the ideas, innovations, and people driving Africa's transition into a more sustainable future. My name is Nixon Kanali. I'll see you in the next episode.